In this video, we're going to generate a secure public user ID, and this secure public user ID will be used to identify our record in the database, and this user ID will be sent back with the JSON or XML response back to a calling client, so that when an API call needs to be made to get user details, this public user ID will be used to identify and find records in our database. And I call it secure public user ID because this is going to be an alphanumeric string of characters. Let's say we will generate a random 30 characters long string, and this string is going to be secure to use because a malicious user cannot guess it. If I use auto-incremented value like 1, 2, and 3 for user ID, then it's very easy to guess user ID in my database. So to generate this public secure user ID, I will create a new class and I will create it inside of shared package, inside of this shared package. So I'm going to create new Java class and I will update package. It's going to be right inside of the shared, and the name of this class will be something like utils. That's going to be an utility class that will contain helpful functions that our project needs. Okay, and I will click on finish, and this is going to be a component because we're going to auto-wire it into our user service implementation class. So I will add an annotation component and I will import it. Okay, and I'm going to paste a couple of functions which I have prepared, and I'm going to walk you through. I also need to paste alphabet and run them here. Okay, so what it does, let's import this random and secure random. Import. So we have defined a function, a public function, which is called generate user ID. And this function will accept a method argument, which is going to be an integer value of how long we want the public user ID to be. We can generate a user ID 10 characters long or 15 characters long, or if you want to make it very secure, like 30 characters long or even 50 characters long. It's up to you. And this function will call the generate random string function, which we're going to use in other code snippet as well. Like we will need to generate an email verification token and other random strings. So we will use this function in few other places. So this function simply generates a string of random characters of a given length. So we are defining string builder of a given length, and then we use this alphabet as a source of characters. We will randomly pick up a character from this alphabet string for a given number of times, like 15 times or 13 times, and then we will append extracted character from this alphabet to a return value, and we will return it. We don't really need these two iterations and key lengths. They come from code snippet that generates secure password. So I will delete this two and I will save this code. Now I'm going to use this utilities class and I'm going to auto-wire it into my user service implementation. And I will call it utils as well. And let me import it. Okay, now I can use this to generate a secure user ID. So I'll call string public user ID equals user utils, and then generate user ID of, let's say, 30 characters long. And then I will use this public user ID and I will add it to the user entity like this. Okay, so now let's run this application and see how it works and preview the user ID that gets recorded into our database. I will set a breakpoint here by double clicking on the sidebar, and then I will click on this little bug icon to debug my application. Okay, my application is up and running. I'll bring up my Postman. And here's HTTP request that we used to use. I will update the email address to a different one, to a unique, so that we do not have a duplicate record in our database. Let's say test4. And I will send this HTTP request. Yes. And we have a debugger breakpoint triggered. If I move mouse over the public user ID, I'll get the value of my generated user ID. So this is the value that's going to be stored in a database. And as you can see, it's a random string of characters, and it's impossible to guess what would be the next user ID. So I'll simply continue this debugger by clicking on play and play. And now I will look up into my database and I will select all users and I will check the last user ID, which has a much better user ID value now. Now we can use this user ID to send it back with our JSON response to a calling client. Let's say it's a mobile application, and then mobile application can use this user ID and its requests to get the details of this particular user. Okay, so let's continue, and I will stop the debugger, switch back to our Spring user interface. I'll close the console. So the next step for us is to encrypt user password. And I'm going to use Spring Security to encrypt user password. So let's learn how to add and configure Spring Security for our project, and then we will come back to this feature and complete it.